Hello, I'm Paul Burns, President and CEO of the Canadian Gaming Association. Welcome to day 2 of the 2021 Virtual Canadian Gaming Summit. On behalf of the Canadian Gaming Association, our board of directors, and our members, we're happy to be able to offer you this virtual opportunity to share information and bring us together. The past year has been a challenging one for gaming in Canada. The resilience of our industry as demonstrated is remarkable, shows the strong leadership and dedication of our employees and companies across the country. The CGA continues to advocate for government programs to help the industry and will not stop until the industry is stable again. But we do have reason to be optimistic because 2021 is full of opportunities ahead. The CGA's ongoing pursuit to permit single event sports wagering will hopefully be realized soon. Our work to build a broad coalition of support with labor, business, sports, and community organizations has kept the issue on the legislative agenda and earned the Safe and Regulated Sports Betting Act, Bill C-218, wide support in the House of Commons and Senate. The bill begins third reading debate today, and we're optimistic the Senate will soon bring the bill to a vote. I'm more confident than ever that we'll be able to have successfully pass this bill and see single event sports wagering in Canada soon. And after many years, we're also thrilled to launch the CGA Academy, a new education and training partnership with the iGaming Academy. It's a microsite available on our website and can provide you access to a broad range of operational compliance training, certification that is jurisdictionally relevant and up to date, including a brand new course on AML. We continue to welcome new members to the association, and I encourage you to consider membership if your organization has not done so yet. We will continue to be at the center of issues affecting gaming in Canada, and we're working hard on behalf of our members. So as we move into the back half of 2021, the CGA remains focused on supporting our members, advocating for continued support, products and tools, such as iGaming in Ontario, single event sports wagering, and supports as we emerge from COVID. I invite anyone with questions about the Canadian gaming industry, why Canada is a great place to do business, or how the association may be able to help, please contact us directly. I look forward to celebrating the reopening of Canada's casinos and community gaming centers in the coming weeks and the return of prosperity to our industry and being together again next year. Enjoyed the summit, and I'd now like to introduce CGA board member, Dean Ehrlich, Executive Vice President of Games for Evry and a Platinum sponsor, to introduce our opening session. Dean, over to you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Dean Ehrlich, and I'm the Executive Vice President and Games Business Leader from Evry Holdings. Evry is proud to support the 2021 Virtual Canadian Gaming Summit as a Platinum level sponsor. Our organization has always recognized significant opportunities in Canada, and we sincerely look forward to our continuing working relationship with the Canadian gaming industry. We couldn't be more excited with our offerings on both our FinTech and Games business units. From the FinTech portfolio, there are 3 distinct products of emphasis: our cashless wallet, anti-money laundering tools, and our player loyalty solutions. From the Games business, our product offerings include our Eilers award-winning hardware and game-themed content for both our standard and premium product lines, including our Evry digital business. With that, it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's opening keynote session in conversation with John Levy and Johnny Aitken. Today's roundtable participants include Mark Silver, founder of the Parleh Media Group. Silver's name has been synonymous with the most ambitious digital media initiatives in Canadian sports over the last 10 plus years, including TSN, CTV Olympics for 2010 and 2012, the Canadian Hockey League, Hamilton Tiger Cats, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Golf Canada, NBA Canada, and the Canadian Premier League. A serial entrepreneur at heart, Silver has founded several ventures over his career, which led him to form the Parleh Media Group with several other respected and accomplished sports media leaders. Also, John Levy, Chairman and CEO of TheScore. John Levy is the founder and CEO of TheScore, a highly successful and experienced media entrepreneur. John has built TheScore into one of the most exciting and forward-thinking companies in the sports media and betting industry. His visionary approach led to TheScore becoming the first media company to create and launch a sportsbook, TheScore Bet, offering a completely unique and deeply integrated experience that fuses media and betting. Also, Johnny Aitken, CEO of PointsBet US. Johnny Aitken has led PointsBet US operation as CEO since launch in January of 2019, spearheading the company's impressive expansion as well as PointsBet's steadfast focus to offer the most bet types in the world across all four major US sports. Additionally, Aitken has challenged the rapidly growing sportsbook to remain at the forefront of introducing well-received, better-first initiatives while also providing clients with the best content and best overall experience for sports bettors. On behalf of today's presenters and the entire team at Every, enjoy today's keynote session. We also hope you enjoy all of the great session content that the summit has assembled today, as well as a virtual networking reception that will occur as the final event today. Thank you for being with us. Enjoy today's keynote session and the 2021 Canadian Gaming Summit.
Welcome to the opening keynote for day 2 of the Gaming Summit. My name is Mark Silver from the Parleh, and I have the privilege of moderating today's conversation with 2 Canadian media and gaming innovators. Before we get into the conversation, I'll quickly introduce our guests. As founder, chairman, and CEO of TheScore, John Levy is truly a pioneer in sports broadcasting and digital media, right up there with other legendary Canadian visionaries. True to form, John has tied the future of his company to the emerging sports betting opportunity in North America, which we'll learn more about today. Our second guest, Nick Selsky, has made a name for himself in daily sports fantasy with Monkey Knife Fight, and he is now days into becoming the Chief Commercial Officer and first Canadian employee of Australia-founded PointsBet. Gentlemen, welcome to the keynote.
Great to be here.
Great to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me. John, always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, good seeing you.
So let's get right into it. So from your experience in the US, and I'll look to both of you for this answer, what do you consider to be a recipe for success when you launch in a newly regulated territory? And Nick, seeing how PointsBet has done this a few times, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Now, as you alluded to, I mean, PointsBet was founded in Australia, very mature, gaming market, and they had a really successful launch in the US that continues to grow exponentially. So what's really exciting about tackling the Canadian market is kind of playing on their mature gaming expertise alongside their experience launching in the US market, and then ultimately taking what they've learned and putting a strong Canadian spin on it. And I'm just the first of soon to be many PointsBet Canada employees. And so what's exciting is to be able to take their best in class product and technology and look at this market and understand how different Canada is from the US, from Australia, from Europe, and really put a unique and genuine spin on what the sports betting experience is going to be like for the soon-to-be Canadian sports betting regulated market.
Nick, thanks for starting us off. I know there's some points to the story that you were telling us there that I'm going to go back to, but before we do that, John, as a Canadian company who has already made the foray into the U.S. and done it well from what I've been following, how do you see coming back home with the opportunity in Canada?
So I'm kind of pinching myself because it's so exciting for we're in a very particular situation, right? And we're a Canadian company. We're rooted in the Canadian media business. Started in cable television with my dad, and then started that amazing TV network in the mid 90s called Headline Sports, which morphed into TheScore. And we sort of grew the brand and our relationship with customers right here in Canada, and always hoped and prayed at some point, because we have this amazing engagement, we got this huge user base all over North America, and we, surprise, surprise, all of our guys love to bet on sports. Wow, what a shocker, right? And always hoped and prayed at some point that the market was going to open up, and we stayed clean. We didn't foray into gray markets or Europe or anywhere else. We sort of, bided our time, and then, sure enough, the U.S. opened up when PASPA fell, and we decided, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to go all in. That's kind of our style. So instead of just being a super affiliate or a marketer for other people who wanted to get into the space, we said, no, let's be the betting operator. So, not only were we the only, sort of digital mobile sports media company, but we're the only digital sports media company to become an operator. And we launched in the US and started in Jersey. Now we're in 4 states, and and just hoped at some point Canada was going to open up. And sure enough, as we sit, on my other screen if you see me looking to my left, it's because I'm watching the Senate hearings as they're going on right now. And we're all sitting here with our fingers crossed. So hopefully, Nick will have something to do up here in Canada, with his new job, and it looks very positive. So learned a huge amount from launching in the U.S. Just as PointsBet has its experience from Australia. We launched in our in the 4 states, and the markets are so similar, Canada and the U.S. There's some nuanced differences, as there is from state to state, but we just can't wait till it opens up here. And in our particular case, we're able to sort of provide the sort of betting opportunity wagering opportunity to our, huge fan base up here in Canada.
Oh, it's an exciting time for both of you guys, and having grown up in Toronto and Canada, obviously, and I remember when TheScore was shipped with the Blackberries back about 15 years ago. It was a fun time. It's great to see your progress.
Coming after you guys at TSN, who had a 10-year head start on us, right? I think you were. I don't know if you were there at the time, but I know.
Not yet.
So lots of great fun.
Let me ask you both, since we're on this initial topic of kind of the rollout in Canada. So assuming everything falls into place the way everyone is hoping it does, we've heard that Ontario will open up first, and I guess there was talk of Alberta maybe next. But realistically, if we're talking again in June of 2022, how many provinces do you think both PointsBet and the Score Bet will be operating in Canada?
That's a good question, right, John? I'd be curious to know your take, but I do think Ontario and Alberta obviously have been pretty aggressive, and I think obviously the folks in BC, obviously the leadership of the BCLC, I think they're probably going to be pretty proactive. And let's face it, the Atlantic Lottery Corporation is also I see it really stretching across Atlantic Canada too. I think we're going to see a national rollout happening faster than it is in the States, but I'd be curious to know what John thinks, obviously.
Yeah, and I think Nick's bang on. I think the experience here is going to be similar to what has happened in the States, and we were more aggressive in our thinking with respect to the U.S. rollout than most. And we started in Jersey, and now we're in the 4 states, but more and more are opening up, and very, very quickly. And it's really, you get the one that goes out there, and then everybody else says, hey, I got to participate in this. And then you also look at the situation that, globally and in North America, we've all gone through. The reason this thing is accelerated in terms of why it's happening faster, governments need money. And, this is an industry that just didn't show up. People have been betting on sports from time and eternity, right? So it's a matter of regulating it, licensing it, bringing it in from the cold, bringing it in from the gray markets and black markets, and regulating it and licensing it and taxing it. And Ontario is going to be first, I do believe. We've been part of that consultative process. Benji and our team have been involved for the last year and a half with Ontario, and they're ready to go. And they're hoping part of that's going to include single event wagering, which, again, fingers crossed, it looks like it will. But quite frankly, they're going to go with or without single event wagering. And that's going to happen, they say, before the end of this year. So the marker is in the ground. We're going to have sports betting in Ontario. Hopefully full sports betting in Ontario sometime, maybe before Super Bowl next year. And I think what you're going to see is the other provinces that Nick's talking about are going to follow suit very quickly. Probably like PointsBet, we're having discussions with BC, Alberta, the eastern provinces. Quebec's a bit of a, we're not sure how that's going to roll out, but I think you're going to, Nick's right. You're going to see it very quickly. And, by what you said, June 22, I don't know, man. I think you'll probably see 3 or 4 of the big provinces on board, and, in different nuances, perhaps from state to state, because certain lotteries deal with things differently, and the regulator in each province, just like in the States, are going to have their own view as to how to roll this thing out most effectively. But I think it's going to be there, and I think it's just so exciting, and way overdue for Canadian businesses, the Canadian population, the leagues, everybody, the media companies, which we can talk about as well. So
yeah, we're going to get into the media companies and a couple other aspects.
Well, sure. And just to touch on one of the things that John said, I mean, obviously the tax revenues are going to be significant, and regulation is going to be really important to start driving some money back, kind of into the economy that way. But let's not forget about the consumer protections that regulation are going to come in, right? The gray market operators, they don't have the level of oversight that I think John and I both can agree the Canadian market needs desperately. We want strong compliance, we want strong education, because ultimately these gray market operators, they're not going to be they're not beholden to the same types of regulatory experience that PointsBet and TheScore is in the US. And I think our companies are going to be able to bring a level of maturity into this market, even though TheScore is less mature from a gaming perspective than a company like PointsBet is, or some of the gray market operators. Ultimately, because of the experience that both of our companies have had in the US, I think that bringing those same experiences and that kind of regulated approach to this country is going to be essential. And let's not overlook the amount of jobs that are going to come into this country. It's not just tax revenues. I mean, look at me, right? Case in point, right? There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of jobs that's going to trickle down into every segment of our country. It's not just the operators, the media companies, teams, brands. I mean, I think as soon as C218 passes, you're going to see the amount of revenue that's going to be coming into this industry. And I mean, geez, I think day one, there's going to be 40, 50, maybe 100 sponsorship, marketing, relationship jobs that are going to open up, because here's a brand new category for companies all across this country to leverage. So, I mean, it's going to be really exciting to see how it rolls out. And I do think that it's the mature gaming operations that are going to really be able to lead the proper evolution of gaming in Canada.
Let's get into that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
I'm just going to say, just because he mentioned the like companies like ours and employment, and because when we appeared before the House before it got to the Senate, right? We appeared as part of the committee, and one of the things we stressed was how our company has grown in terms of employees. When we sold the TV network to Rogers, we were down about 30 or 40 employees. That grew to about 150, and now we're up to over 300 to 350 employees. 85-90% of them are right here. Now we've got people all over the world now, but the bulk of them are here, and that's only going to continue to grow. So Nick raises a great point. It's not just about the money that's going to be refunneled through the governments. It's what each of our companies are doing in terms of hiring, mass, and in different areas. There's product, there's engineers, there's content, there's data provide. I mean, it's massive, and it's really transforming companies like ours and everybody else's to another level.
It's an exciting time. There's no doubt. I mean, time that we're talking today, there's, we know Covers.com is aggressively hiring, in the Maritimes. We've seen the OLG is hiring the executive roles around sports. It's certainly exciting. Now, looking at the opportunity, and I think we want to deal with this question rather quickly to make sure we're making good use of the audience's time. We've heard the number thrown around many times, $14 billion of wagering going on in Canada. That is gray market. That is all sorts of other wagering that's going on. That is not the legal market. When you're both looking at the opportunity in Canada, and I'm not going to say how much you can achieve in the next year, but looking a little further out, how big is that $14 billion number truly when you add on the regulation, the support for responsible gaming, and the tax revenue that comes with it and the marketing dollars that'll flow into the market and the media partnerships we'll talk about in a minute that are all part of this. What does that number truly look like in Canada?
Well, listen, I'll start off, and basically, we're all sort of looking at similar numbers. I mean, Deloitte's threw out numbers talking about a revenue of potentially 28 billion within 5 years. I like the numbers that we sort of looked at because we sort of extrapolated, the audience, the betting universe in Canada, compared that to what was in the States, and then compared that to what was in Europe. And specifically, we looked at Canada, but Ontario. And, in the next couple of years, we're talking about somewhere around 1.8 to I think $2.5 billion of potential revenue being generated just in Ontario, and that's for our estimation is that's approximately 40 to 45% of the market all across Canada. So you can extrapolate from there. So, and it just makes sense that those numbers are there. And then it depends on the efficiency of how you operate. What can you take out of that? What's your market share, which is key. Everybody talks about in terms of how much you're going to capture of these revenues. But, I even think that these numbers are pretty conservative because, we know, how many people bet on sports. We know in Canada, for example, where the gray market has flourished as compared to the States, where they really did try to clamp down on it and close it up. There are people who are waiting for companies like ours and PointsBet and to be able to trust and be, and to be able to participate with. Notwithstanding, in addition to the fact that we're going to approach it in a different way, these are our customers in our particular case. PointsBet's going to have a different approach, but they've got a brand, they've got a big name, and they've got a great experience in the business. So it's a whole level of different trust. I'm not just dealing with somebody who I see the odd ad on during a CFL game and I'm not sure who they are or where they are or anything like that. These are companies that people have lived with and grown up with all over the world, and I think these numbers are conservative.
Well, and to John's point, I think that PointsBet Canada and PointsBet overall, we look at this country as a unique opportunity. It's going to be different than the U.S. It's going to be different from Australia. I look at this country very much like a mosaic, right? We're not a melting pot of people. Whereas NFL is a major anchor point for sports betting in the US, the reality is in Canada, we have a nation that has a lot of different nationalities, a lot of different cultures who have a lot of different sports that they're passionate about. Let's just take as an example, cricket is massive in Toronto. It's a key market as far as the international cricket audience and the international cricket governing body is looking at. And, I don't think I don't think we truly understand how big the cricket market, as an example, could be in Canada. So PointsBet Canada being anchored through the PointsBet group in Australia and their DNA with cricket, and obviously, let's face it, the 24 hours of customer support and the fact that we built the PointsBet has built and controls their own technology platform, we're going to be able to really customize the experience to what the Canadian sports fan wants. Let's face it, hockey's king in Canada, but not all Canadians love hockey. There are a lot of other sports that a lot of other Canadians are passionate about, and that's what really kind of drives me and drives us is thinking about what that mosaic of Canada is and how can you efficiently customize a product offering to really open up and unlock the power that sports gaming is going to have for those markets, because it's going to be pretty exciting.
All right, so Nick, before we let you close, you're going to have to throw out a number.
A number as far as how big I think the market is going to be. Well,
for sure.
Mark, I just started at Points. I don't start at PointsBet, or I just started at PointsBet. As far as numbers
you
go,
would have been D2 in PointsBet by the time we hear this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. As far as numbers go, I've been reading the same, PwC studies and Deloitte studies and talking to the same people that John.
All right, so we're just going to say we're going to go with John. John, thanks for taking the lead here.
There you go.
Thank you. It's okay. That's leadership, right, John?
The question between Nick and I is what market share our company is going to have. We know that the market's going to be big. We're not worried about the market. what we see as amazing is the opportunity that companies like ours, where and Nick said something in passing, but was very important about owning your own tech stack, which is hugely important. I mean, that's a feature of that we as well did over the course of the last couple of years after we launched, and we recognized we didn't want to leave it to third parties, and we created the app the way we did, and we wanted to do that in the betting, and that's important because you have to be flexible. And who knows? Getting back to what sports are going to be the most popular, we may know or we may not know at this point. And the trick is to be able to adapt as you get feedback from your customers, and they will tell you where you're right and where you're wrong, and that's the beauty of what's in front of us. And if you do have the capability of adjusting quickly, providing new product, combining new markets, and even new markets within a sport. It's not just the massive like soccer, international soccer, cricket, table tennis. I mean, keep going and going, but it's within a sport. I think there's a whole new world out there of, for example, in-game betting, different types of products that are available, and you got to be on your game. You got to have a great tech team. You got to have a great team that identifies this and is able to continue to provide product that excites the users.
I'm right there
John,
with you.
if you don't mind, I just want to echo what John said. He's 100% right. I think that brand is going to be really important and building that identity, but ultimately product, I believe, is going to win. At the end of the day, that is what the Canadian sports bettor is going to be drawn into, and that's what's going to be able to retain them. It's going to be who has the best product, who speaks to the Canadian sports fan. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why I got so excited about joining PointsBet and being number one employee for PointsBet Canada, is literally best in class infrastructure, best in class tech, which will allow us up here to really cater that product to try and create that best product possible. Because to John's point, I mean, that's really, I think, going to separate the top tier operators from the second and third tier operators.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Nick. And let me just pick up from what John is saying as we kind of go to our last question with the time that we have. So first of all, John, back in my days, working at TSN, owning that mobile product, always envious of what you were doing. You were so focused. I was jealous of that focus. At the Parleh, we have been doing an ongoing survey, not scientific to the point of Deloitte's, but scientific enough. We were asking what sports media content our audience prefers, and the score is right up there with The Athletic, and it's very interesting that Sportsnet and TSN and the others are down below that. And so as we get into our last question, which let's kind of take the score and put you aside, John, because you are so unique in this landscape, and you are going to operate as a book as well as a media company. How do you see the rest of the landscape and environment playing out? I'm not just talking about TV and the oligopoly of sports broadcasters there. I'm also talking about the newspapers, and I mean, The Athletic is kind of in there. I guess they're going to be a newspaper very soon if that acquisition goes through. But Nick, I'm going to start with you here because PointsBet is not a media company today. So I'm curious what you see as the opportunity to gain market share and reach through media partnerships.
I mean, I think they're going to be incredibly important. It's just going to be one aspect of how I believe the consumer is going to be reached in this country. Obviously, you want to fish where the fishes are, right? Sports fans engage with content. That's a no-brainer. Ultimately, I believe that the amount of influence and impact that sports gambling is going to have on the media industry in this country is going to be significant. But ultimately, I believe that the Canadian sports fan wants to be engaged with in a very authentic and genuine way. So it's not just going to be focused on those big media companies or even the smaller media companies. I mean, ultimately, there are, you have top tier and you have very grassroots, granular podcasts, and other digital content platforms that I think are going to be very big players within the sports gaming ecosystem. And I think the operators who are going to have the most success are going to be those operators that can figure out how can I connect with that Canadian sports fan, that casual Canadian sports fan, not just that hardcore sports gambler, not just that hardcore obsessive sports fan who watches Sports Center or Sportsnet, Central every day, right? Or Connected, sorry. It's how do you find that casual, passionate fan who listens to the podcast that's featuring, the Halifax Mooseheads, right? How do you reach those people? So I think
not that you can bet on CHL point yet. Let's just call that out.
No, but
not in Canada.
But I would argue that a Halifax Moosehead fan also likes the NHL, also likes the NBA or the CFL, right?
But it brings up a very interesting topic around what sports are going to be, allowed to be bet on. But we'll save that for some other panel at the conference.
Totally, but John, I think that the amount of money and the amount of jobs that are going to flow into this industry, like we started talking about, it's not just about tax revenues, right? It's about these media companies are going to be hiring specific sports gambling content producers, commentators, writers, voices, right? There is going to be such a massive trickle-down effect that sports gaming and C218 is going to have. And I think that, not to just beat the point home, but I think the operators who can really have a look at the Canadian landscape and identify how to connect with that sports fan, that's going to be the key. It's not just going to be about plastering your name all over TSN or Sportsnet. I don't think that's going to be the winning strategy.
John, what do you think?
Well, we are in this different situation and fairly unique because, we've sort of always sort of thought about the fan in the first place. And you mentioned, when we were first on BlackBerry and we were actually first on the Razr flip phone, actually before that, it was all about following the audience. It was all about paying attention, take your freaking goggles off. And we were fortunate because we weren't big. We weren't TSN. We weren't Sportsnet. We were this little silly sports network that did one thing, and that was try to cater and scratch an itch of the public. And that was our focus. And it worked, as you said, because, the app not only became really popular in Canada, which we kind of had hoped it would become because we were that cool young sports network, but it took off like crazy in the States. And it's that same approach that we're doing going into the betting space. Betting is not this monolithic thing out there all by itself. As I said earlier, betting is only one aspect of why people love sports and why they're passionate about sports. Nick, found out that people were with Monkey Knife Fight. I think I got it right. They were passionate about sports because of this weird sort of new type of fantasy that he created or that was created. That was very clever. I'm not sure how you got away with it, but it was very clever in terms of legalities, but that's a whole other story. But the bottom line is he was scratching an itch. And there's a passion for sports that includes people wanting to bet on sports. And I don't care whether you're a VIP or a casual sports bettor or a person who's never bet on sports yet. So our whole philosophy is integrate betting into this bigger ecosystem, which is in our case, TheScore. And make score bets betting available just as one of the aspects as to why people love sports. So that's why it's integrated into our main app. And that's what we do in the States, obviously, and what we're going to do and what we're doing in Canada as well. Give people the opportunity to bet at the touch points of where that they get the inkling, whether it's on a podcast or whether it's in our social media or whether it's on our app or whether it's, when they're hitting the game 100 frickin' times on a Sunday night or a Monday night watching an NFL football game or on all Sunday. So that's our different approach. And when we think about we are the integration of betting and media because that's kind of all one thing. That's how we've always looked at it. And I think that's why we're having success in the US. And that's why I think, we're going to be one of those players, that Nick talks about in that sort of upper echelon in Canada, in our ability to be able to continue to scratch that itch. Don't think like a media company. Don't think like a freaking betting company. Think of one person, the consumer. How can I best serve that consumer? And where can I serve things up to them? Surprise, delight it, make them easy for them, and be part of that conversation. And that's kind of what worked with the TV network. It's what worked with the app. And I think it's what's going to work with. And it's going to change. Nick was also right. What is today isn't going to be tomorrow. And we're going to be on this panel 2 years from now looking back thinking, God, were we stupid? I mean, Christ, it's going to evolve.
But I will say, and just to end that thought, and I agree with you, John, but down the road, the one thing that we're still going to think about is converting a funded gaming user. Right? Ultimately, that's our goal, right? We want to get people to deposit money and to gamble, right?
Right.
Being able to do that, that is the greatest challenge, right? You can have the greatest content out there, you can have the greatest podcasts out there, but unless you can figure out how to convert that user into a sports gambler, well, ultimately you're not as successful. And that's why working with a mature gaming operator who has come from Australia into the US and now into Canada, that's driving my narrative.
Nick, well said, well said. You have the stage. We gave it to you. I'm excited for both of you and to follow both of your journeys. Clearly, those are different journeys. Maybe they'll converge at some point if PointsBet has the right reach and media platforms to do it. But for now, I think the audience probably has a lot of questions for us. So thank you both for the kind of the formal part of our chat today, and we are going to open it up for questions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for our Q&A session today. If you would like to submit a question, just type your question into the Q&A tab on your web page and press enter. So let's bring up our panel and we can tackle some of those questions that have already come in.
All right, I think everybody can hear me. John, welcome back.
Thank you.
We don't have a ton of time for questions, audience, so we're gonna dive right into one, John. And Nick is there too. Hey, Nick. And let's see how much time we can use up for some great additional context to our conversation today. So, how concerned are you with what happens to gray market operators once provinces start issuing licenses? John, maybe we'll start with you.
I think each province is going to decide what the law is, what the regulation is, because they're managing and managing the process. I think what has to happen is that in each province that companies like ours or Nick's are operating in, it's got to be a level playing field. That's the bottom line. They'll set the law, the regulation, the licensing, how it's going to be taxed, and anybody in that jurisdiction should be playing by the same game rules. So if the gray market guys want to come into Ontario, then they're going to have to live by the same rules that we're living in, and not the way it's happening now, which is just under some other authority. And I think that's the way it's going to happen on a province by province basis. I think Ontario's been pretty clear. They want open competition. They want lots of players, and they're setting the framework within which we're all going to play. I'm excited. I can't wait. I want to compete with all these guys. But we all got to be playing by the same rules. So everybody into the pool, and let's play by the same rules here in Ontario.
Well, yeah, and just to be a little bit more specific, I mean, once the regulatory framework comes in, I think Canadians are going to want their money to be served and deposited and withdrawn on our soil. And I think gray market operators are going to be able to apply for the licenses. And ultimately, I think it's going to be really important for the Canadian consumer to know that their money is being processed in Canada, right? And that's going to be one of the key differentiations, obviously, between a regulated market and the kind of gray market that exists right now. So I think that's going to be a really interesting piece to see how the gray market operators tackle that challenge.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Now, I think the last question we have time for, and this is a very exciting question, so I'm hoping you got some good answers for us. So when we look ahead a few weeks to the House of Commons blessing the single event wagering bill here, C218, what's the first order of business for PointsBet? I'll come to the score right after.
Well, no, I mean, the first, as soon as C218 passes, I mean, we're committed to hiring a ton of Canadians, regardless of whether C218 passes or not. If it does, you're going to see dozens and dozens of folks. We're literally targeting best-in-class folks across every segment of an operating unit because we're building a distinct Canadian business. So that's going to be literally, that'll be my job, is really bringing on the best Canadians I can find to join our team.
So, John, you already have a lot of great Canadians on your team. So, Nick, obviously, you're a great Canadian to start at PointsBet. But, John, there's a little shorter time frame for you to be able to make a difference, right? So, what does that look like for the score?
Well, let me just say one thing first about the process. Let me just quickly, because I think it's being considered at the Senate today as we speak. It's in front of the committee. It may get all the way through. It might get processed. Government works, and things show up, and it may get pushed to next week. But it's happening today next week. So we're all very excited about that. And I just want to set the time frame for how this is all going to happen. And then, but the bottom line is the other thing to remember too is whether the provision in the criminal code gets removed or not, Ontario is going. So, and Ontario has already in their paper said, they'll be able to do parlays, they'll be able to do other things. So sports betting in one form or fashion is going to be here, hopefully by the end of 2021. And that will include hopefully single event wagering, assuming the federal government is able to amend the criminal code and it's in the Senate today. What we're doing is, we're already readying ourselves. We're already hiring up. We're getting ready to launch in Ontario and in any other province that comes on board. And, we'll be applying for licenses. We'll be going through the same process here that we've been going through in the U.S. on a state-by-state basis so that we become licensed, regulated, and taxed in our great country and our home turf. And whenever the trigger goes in Ontario, we're going to be ready with both our sports betting and hopefully with our iGaming products. So very, very, very exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited for both of you. And I'm also excited for our session today because we've been given more time. So we have time for a couple more questions.
Oh, awesome.
So the next question is about kind of new players, emerging players, like let's say companies that we don't really know of today. This is innovators who will show their cards maybe later once the bigger guys and the established guys like yourselves go first. Like, do you think there's going to be room for different innovative kind of niche players to come into the market and compete and grab audience and run a business that has some good fundamentals to it?
I mean, yes. I mean, I think so. I'm curious to know what John thinks, but I mean, ultimately, the cool thing about the sports and the media landscape is things are, from a technological perspective, we're still very early on in the game, so to speak. There's advancements happening. There's great startups both in Toronto, KW, and all across Canada that are really trying to innovate in the space. So I think that, quite frankly, I think there is room for differentiation. There is room for some new companies to emerge. They just need to be pretty tactical about how they're going to get their brand and their messaging out there, because let's face it, I mean, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound, right? You can have the great product, but if you don't have the capital or the ideas around how to get that, get the product out there, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So, I mean, to answer your question, yes, there absolutely is going to be a place, because the nature of in-game, the nature of real-time is all evolving. It's just going to take smarts, not just on the product, but also on the launch and the marketing side to get those products to market properly.
Listen, I think there's what's really interesting is, obviously I think there's going to be ingenuity. The startups are going to show up. I mean, from a data engineering standpoint, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that we're starting to get into, and from an analytics and another point of view. But I think there's the other side of this whole thing. And I mean, in addition to the consolidation, which is going to take place within the industry over the next 35, I don't think it's just going to be small companies that are coming in. I think some of the big companies are going to be coming in. The Facebooks, the Amazons. You can already see these guys out there. They're already trying to figure out their entrance into sports, and whether it's streaming live events on one of their platforms or whether it's looking at other opportunities in the sports landscape, and they have the capital and they have the wherewithal and they have the digital experience, and they've been living in this digital world for their whole lives. And now they see this amazing opportunity, this amazing audience, and this passion for sports that ain't going anywhere. So I don't only think it's going to be at the little end, I think it's going to be at the big end. And then we're these guys in the middle who are just sort of doing what we do. And I think it's amazing opportunity for lots of new players to come into this thing.
I'm glad you highlighted that, John, because the FANG effect is clear and present. I mean, they could buy anything they want really at any time. We've seen that with Amazon and NFL, obviously. Looking at PointsBet and TheScore, and I think we'll run out of time after this one. Are you looking to acquire some of these niche players that prove they have like a strong value proposition that can bolster your offering, whether it's in the Canadian market or globally?
Yes.
All right, quick answer. Good.
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's some really sharp stuff out there, and we're in the betting space. We're everybody's jonesing to try and do what we know today right. How about tomorrow? How about the day after? Creating new product, getting all this data, all this content, being ahead of the curve. I mean, most people in the betting space aren't thinking like digital companies yet. They're thinking like old legacy companies, and they're thinking about how do I take a bet and blah, 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 and all this. And you got to do that. No, I shouldn't demean that. You got to do it right. And you got to have at least, enough product to enter into market to compete with the offshore guys and as they exist and to make sure you're in good shape. But, think like a digital company. Think about all the amazing stuff that you're going to be able to do with this data and with this content. Before I order, when I hop in a car and Uber, they know where I'm going before I know where I'm going. At 7:30 on a Tuesday night before I drive back to Hamilton, they're taking me to do my workout. Imagine putting that sort of mental sort of capability into all the data and that we have, and that's just simple stuff. So, and there are companies out there that have amazing talent that are doing this stuff, and some of that stuff could be interesting to companies like ours.
100%. The experience of that live sports fan is going to evolve so unbelievably over the next 5 to 10 years. And there are people that are thinking about aspects of this space that, quite frankly, companies, regardless of how big or small they are, just can't tackle, right? So it's the buy versus build. You want to find great ideas. You want to find the right people to execute those ideas. This is my third day at PointsBet, and we were talking about acquiring 3 companies earlier today. Literally, these conversations are happening all the time, and that's what's really exciting about this space. Is there's some incredible talent out there, and there are companies like TheScore and PointsBet who have the understanding of where the market could go and the resources to not only acquire or partner with other groups, but the excitement to bring those new ideas and those new innovative minds into the fold, because we don't know. As John said earlier, we don't know what this landscape is going to look like in a few years. What we want to do is find the best and smartest people to help us figure that out. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in this space today, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
Listen, John, Nick, thank you so much for being so open with your plans, your thoughts, your opinions. I could tell the audience, if you're looking to follow what they're doing and any players in the industry with a focus on Canada, you can sign up for the Parleh newsletter. Steve McAllister covers this every week. The Parleh, you can reach it at parleh.ca. And I'll hand it back to our organizers. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, guys.